Today we are going to be covering some Fallout stuff.
That's it? That's the intro?
Yeah.
It was a good intro. I give it a solid 8 out of 10. Really good energy, but I think it could have used like a little more pizzazz. You know, more Italian hand movements. Get that Italian blood flowing you got in there.
Here, let me fix it. What's up, everybody?
I love it. I love it. I love it. And you are Italian, so you can make that joke. You want pizza later?
Yes.
So Fallout is a big fascination of yours and mine. We both love the Fallout series, and there was a really cool idea online that I saw just the other day published over on Game Rant, which I wanted to talk about. So this is not my idea, but I wanted to kind of expand on this and talk about it,
However, something funny about it is somebody stole the idea and tried to pass it off as their own article.
Yeah, I saw another person like throw their name on the article, and then I saw another thing too. So there's like all these like dollar store knockoff video game websites trying to steal it.
But if you are at all a fan of Skyrim, you probably know what the Dark Brotherhood is, and if you don't, then get out.
Well, no, exactly, like Skyrim, Oblivion as well. I mean, the Dark Brotherhood goes way back. So before we get into this, if you enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. We love the Elder Scrolls and Fallout universes. We want to make more videos on them as stuff comes up, and we have a Fallout playlist on this channel, so be sure to check that out. Yay. But the idea here is essentially that Fallout 5, or any other Fallout really, needs its equivalent to the Dark Brotherhood. Now, the author of this article kind of gets into it a little bit, talking about how there are a lot of different factions in the Fallout universe. You know, you have things like Caesar's Legion, you have the NCR.
Which they don't do anything with anymore.
Right, you have the Brotherhood of Steel, obviously, and all these other groups. But
that are in every game.
That's true, too. But the thing is, like, other than the Brotherhood of Steel themselves, there is not, like, a common faction through pretty much every Fallout game. I mean, the Brotherhood's kind of everywhere in different chapters, but the thing is, the Dark Brotherhood in Elder Scrolls, in Skyrim, in Oblivion, and other games, it's very much a through thread where you have this secret society of assassins who accept contracts and go around and carry out those contracts. And one of the things that's really interesting about it, especially now that you have the Radiant quest system from Skyrim and from Fallout 4 and stuff like that, is you can essentially expand on this idea tenfold, because in the games you get contracts and characters you can kill and stuff like that, and a lot of them are now repeating in terms of the Radiant quest lines, where they can essentially give you quests forever, and some of them can kind of cycle through and repeat, but they can also create NPCs that are, their sole purpose is to be there as an assassination target now. So that's kind of a cool idea that we can see in the games too, and it kind of goes on to expand something that's a bit of an issue with Fallout, which is that there isn't this common faction that you're always kind of keeping your eye out for in the background that's everywhere, you know?
Well, you know, also, I think it could work really well because the Dark Brotherhood is very, very secretive. I mean, like, most people in Skyrim don't even really know about it, you know? So, like, the reason you find out about it is because you literally go underground and talk to thieves, which are, like, criminals and stuff like that. So I kind of feel like it would work to say, like, the Dark Brotherhood's been there all along. It's just, you know, none of the main characters that you played as really encountered them.
Well, yeah, and there are a lot of different factions that have kind of operated in the background. We even saw that in Fallout 3, where you had some stuff with the Commonwealth and androids, which would kind of go on to be synths. And there also are these Chinese factions that are still operating in secret, which are in either different sects, like underground in America, or overseas and stuff. So there's all these different things that are still happening in the Fallout universe from before the war. It would be really interesting to see a group that kind of rose early on in the days of the, like, I guess the aftermath of the war, to try and influence and shape how the various wastelands formed. You know, you could even have some, like, big twist with this, which I think would be really fascinating. Imagine if you had something where the NCR itself was partially formed by these people, where you had, like, you know, the guidance of, like, who the next president was, sort of guided by this malicious group in the background of whatever it is. It doesn't have to necessarily be the NCR. It could also be any other group, but kind of how the Enclave operates in the background of Fallout 3 and other games, and you kind of see them and you start to see them operating and surfacing. I think you could very easily, like you said, do that with another Fallout game where they've been here all along. It's just we're finally meeting them now.
Yeah, I mean, I find that really interesting because it gives another excuse for you to have another faction. You can ally yourself to have another ending, because, like, one of my favorite things in the Fallout games is being able to replay them and choose a different faction and choose a different ending in a way, and do these different quests every time you play through it. It's something that I really enjoy, like making those relationships with these faction members and learning more about like the inner secrets of how they work. So it's a really good excuse to not only bring back something like the NCR if you did that, but also bring in this new faction that like people don't really know about anymore and keep things fresh and interesting while still having it be the Fallout world and not changing it a ton.
Well, and it's interesting too, because when you mention that, the Dark Brotherhood also is innately spiritual in Elder Scrolls. The thing is, I think a lot of people think of Fallout and they're like, well, it can't be that, you know? And obviously it can't be the same. Like, you're not going to want the whole Hail Sithis mantra and the Night Mother and the, you know, you don't want to copy paste, but I do think that there's a lot of mysterious and dark stuff you can do. Like, there are people in the Fallout universe who practice and believe in magic and stuff like that. And there are even some hints that there is spiritual stuff at work in the Fallout games, where you'll go to certain locations that appear haunted, or you'll end up at places where there's like a ghost or like a vision of the past and stuff like that in certain Fallout quests.
And Joshua Graham, one of the most prolific characters in Fallout, in my opinion, is like a hardcore Mormon.
Yeah, that's true. And he also has some stuff to back up what he's saying, where like there is sort of this allusion to fate going on in the background of New Vegas, where like, yes, a lot of it is decision making, but you know, Graham and others make a good point of like this courier going from nothing to becoming like this, you know what I mean, like moving force in the wasteland, kind of like what happened with Graham and Caesar, where they went from just being, you know, guys to these massive powerhouses. Like, there is a lot of stuff going on in the background with like guided fate, or like the ability of interaction with free will, with like destiny and stuff. Fallout's like very open-ended, where it could just all be choice, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot you can do to guide that with this faction or things going on behind them.
A lot of people don't think about this much, but you know, obviously if a bunch of nukes went off and there was nothing left, and you know, there wasn't really many things to fall back on, humanity tends to lose hope, and a lot of people need to find a belonging or a sense of belonging when they are trying to survive. So it would make a lot of sense for a group of people to start, you know, relying on some really weird, like, gods that they made up, or like becoming some part of a cult and like believing that they need to murder people. I mean, even in Fallout Shelter, there is like a very brief storyline where you go into like these different missions and you find out that there are these people who believe that if they kill enough people, they'll awaken death.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And they believe that, like, death is going to save them all or something. And it's like, it's very common, I think, in the Fallout universe for these people to just kind of be losing their minds, because it's like, it's a wasteland. Like, you went from having everything to having nothing.
Well, and the Children of the Atom are a good example of that. Their church. There's a lot of different groups that are like that. Jason Bright's followers in Fallout New Vegas, where they want to essentially go to their promised land using the rockets. There's a lot of different spiritual beliefs and stuff behind that, and I think that that can actually combine very well with the modern world of Fallout, because you can have that in the background kind of influencing their decisions, but then also they have a practical use too in terms of gameplay. The thing with the Dark Brotherhood is they gave you an actually evil organization to work for. Now, I think Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 both do a good job with this, and so do the classic Fallouts. But if you think about it, Fallout 76 and Fallout 4, they don't do a great job of giving you just something evil to side with. I mean, there are some morally questionable decisions you can make, but there's nothing like blowing up Megaton or like siding with Caesar and enslaving all of Vegas. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of that decision making in the past, and there's a lot with Elder Scrolls that lets you just be a bad guy if you want to, not just like a morally misguided character that Fallout's kind of gone for.
And I think something sad about Fallout 76 is I kind of felt like it lacked a lot of the factions that you get to move on into and do the inner workings of, because it's like an online game and mostly you're doing, you know, just whatever and kind of just walking around the world, and you're supposed to like rebuild and stuff.
And repetitive quests for these factions to just kind of build up your stats.
Yeah, so I wish that they went a little bit more in depth with it, and I think another Fallout game is a really good excuse for them to go really in depth and add in another faction, be like, hey, here's some stuff that happened. They didn't do a great job with the factions in 76.
Now, I think a big problem with that is that they establish in canon that most of those factions were established later, too. So, like, then they kind of tie their hands behind their back when they need to release, like, a super early game. It's not that it doesn't work, but it's that a lot of those iconic factions and ideas that you would think of, they're not there yet. I will say, though, that game did do one thing really good that ties into this, which was introduce a little bit more spiritualism with things like the cryptids.
And the Mothman cultists.
Yeah, and even the Mothman. I wish we got
more of that.
Well, even the Mothman himself. Yeah. Yes, there are these ones that appear to be not necessarily like a spiritual thing, but there's also these Mothmen, or a central Mothman, the legendary Mothman, who appears to have existed before the war. Mm-hmm. And that kind of ties into, like, you don't know what was out there before the war fully. They're always expanding on that. So I think that this kind of thing would fit very well into it. They've already proven that Bethesda can do this in the Elder Scrolls games. I think the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood are two of the ones everyone looks for in every Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah, because it's really iconic.
Yeah, they're like a backbone that people are always like, what's that going to be in this one? And that's like the through line. I think to get that, other than just the Brotherhood of Steel, because the Brotherhood of Steel is unevenly written. Every chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel is different. You can have the Capital Wasteland chapter, where they're just genuinely morally good people, or you can have chapters like you see in Fallout 4 under Maxon, where like they're just really not, and lack a lot of sympathy. I think what would be cool about this Dark Brotherhood cult-like group is that you could always reintroduce them, and it's not that they need to not be sympathetic at all, but it would allow the player to be evil, do something evil.
It would allow Fallout to have a staple in their franchise that is evenly written.
And on top of all of that, I think that this would be the perfect opportunity to reintroduce the karma system.
Yes.
That never should have left.
That was the best system ever. I absolutely loved, like, having certain characters be upset with you for being evil and certain characters being like, yeah, let's be evil together.
Yeah, it was so dumb to remove that. That was, like, one of the best RPG elements of Fallout. And Elder Scrolls didn't really have that. It separated Fallout from Elder Scrolls because it made it so that when you made decisions, they directly impacted those things with your character and how your character was perceived and stuff like that.
Yeah, I thought that was really unique.
It's just a bummer they got rid of it. It seems like they tried to, in that way, streamline it to be more like Elder Scrolls, but by doing that, they took out something iconic. So my point is, why not take something iconic from Elder Scrolls if you really want to emulate some stuff from there, because there are great ideas in there, put it in and re-add in the karma system, and you have reintroduced a ton of player choice. Maybe you have some characters who don't want to talk to you if you work with this faction, kind of like we saw a lot of in New Vegas, where if you started siding with Caesar, Boone would just be like, nah, piss off and leave. I like that kind of stuff.
I thought that was really cool that, like, the NPCs had enough of a brain to be like, oh, you're doing this? Well, I don't want to associate with you anymore. And it changes some of the story.
Yeah.
I always thought that was really cool, and I hadn't seen very many games do that.
It would help reintroduce RPG choices and your character building and a staple in the games and a lot more. And on top of all of that, I know I didn't talk about it too much, but this is the kind of repetitive quest I think people would get behind. Mm-hmm. If you had a quest line through with this Dark Brotherhood-like faction, and then you had these Radiant quests where it was like, go to this city and kill this guy. And if you get caught by the guards, that's a problem, so you have to think about how you're doing it. It kind of adds in this stealth element, almost like you'd see in a game like Dishonored or Skyrim, where now you are not just working for that faction, but because that faction is evil, if you're caught, you're technically going to be at odds with everyone around you too. The thing is, with the last few games, it's been pretty homogenous, like who you side with, and you can play out every side to almost the end. And I kind of find that annoying, because with New Vegas, it really emphasized, hey, listen, if you keep working with Caesar, you're going to be seen as a terrorist to the NCR.
Yeah, I loved that. I thought it was really interesting because it kind of forced you to have to play the game again. And that's what these developers want. They want you to play the game multiple times.
I think a lot of people didn't play Fallout 4 multiple times unless they were on PC modding it, because they were kind of like, oh,
I already did everything.
Yeah, because you can actually side with everyone. You can do almost the entire Minutemen questline, almost the entire Institute questline, and almost the entire Railroad and Brotherhood quest lines, and then you hit a point point on the final mission for each one where it's like, if you do this, you're going to get that ending for the game.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. So you can technically push them all to the final mission.
Introducing the Dark Brotherhood, I feel like, would also give back a lot of interesting personality to the Fallout games, because even though I really like Fallout 76, I kind of feel like all of the quests that I've done so far are not nearly as memorable or personality-filled as they were in New Vegas.
Yeah, no.
And I guess that's something that I feel like the newer games are lacking, is like a little bit of that extra oomph that made me keep wanting to come back.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do think that that is the RPG choices. You know, that is the iconography, the fun decision-making, the karma system, the, what was it called? The faction relationship system. That kind of stuff I think is drastically missing. And I think that a Dark Brotherhood insert faction, not just a copy-paste, but something well thought out and well implemented into the game, would help introduce. And I think that instead of just China being the enemies of everyone all the time, I think it would introduce a new interesting villain that's maybe been in the background operating in the United States the entire time. And maybe this is the remnants of a previous, you know, faction from before or during the war, like the Enclave sort of is, or maybe it's something new that rose after the war. It doesn't matter. We just need a new villain or a new kind of bad system and bad faction that actually is a through line.
As a final closing thought for me, that's something that really annoyed me about them just kind of dropping Caesar in like the rest of the games, is like, you know, they acted like in New Vegas Caesar was a huge force on that side of the US and stuff, and that like people just knew his name and he was terrifying.
Yeah.
And then they never really talk about him again because they always have games set on the other side of the country.
It's funny because people on the other side of the country act like they've barely heard of him.
Yeah, and
like, it just doesn't matter.
It's ridiculous. I think we need a new evil that's really interesting that can show up all over the country.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of different lore they can add in with this faction that I think would really benefit the games. It's kind of too bad that we haven't seen this yet. It's not something I thought of before reading this, but when you read this article, which I'm linking in the description down below.
Very well written.
And I have not archived. You should actually read the actual article because it's well written, it's well thought out, and it's something now in hindsight that kind of comes off like a no-brainer. Yeah, this was Jake Selway from Game Rant, by the way. So good job, Jake.